As creative practitioners, we exist in this really interesting period in history, which has been defined by the rapid advancements of technology. It can feel at times that we are these small, insignificant beings living amongst these giant, incomprehensible beasts, and it's up to us to try and decide how we fit in this world. Lately in my work, I've been asking the question, what separates the man from the machine? More and more creative fields are becoming streamlined and automated, and while this can have plenty of benefits to an artist's workflow, what effect does this have on the industry as a whole? Fortunately, these questions aren't new, and they've been raised by artists for a very long time. There's this saying that history often repeats itself, and it's important to acknowledge this because by studying these patterns, we can make better decisions in the future. Thinking about this topic, I'm reminded of my design history class in my undergrad, and in particular our study of the arts and crafts movement. This design movement dates back to the times of the first industrial revolution, and I started to notice some patterns emerging regarding those positions artists found themselves in back then and where we are now. So I decided to look into what exactly this movement believed in, why they create, and most importantly, how they create. And what I found was what it all boiled down to, what emboldened these artists to make art. It was the importance of process, the act of doing. It wasn't about the destination, it was the journey that fueled the soul. So what I want to do, and importantly what I want to show you, is how I can kind of piggyback off of this work done in the past and see how we can take the lessons learnt then and apply it to our own practice as an exercise in methodology. And we can see how that can strengthen a body of work and improve the communication of ideas. Let's take a closer look at some of these concepts. Like I mentioned earlier, the arts and craft movement existed as a counterculture to modern capitalistic society, and William Morris in particular became the figurehead for anti-industrial artisans. They realised that they were soon to be outperformed in the eyes of the average consumer, and they needed to find ways to recontextualise their work. Charles Robert Ashby, another notable figure of the movement, started to unpack their feelings in chapters in Workshop Reconstruction and Citizenship, saying that we talk of a piece of machine-made work as soulless. What a deal we mean when we say that. And soulless is a key word you often hear in these sorts of discussions. 40 years later, German Jewish philosopher Walter Benjamin refers to this as a devaluing of the aura of a work of art in his essay, The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. By making any attempts to recreate what was once handmade outside of the original personal and cultural context is simply inauthentic. Now, I can agree with both of these sentiments, and this is the kind of lens I was looking for in my own creative practice. Like I said, this is a confusing time and it can be hard to stay motivated and to remember why we do what we do. Now, I'm not interested in smithing jewelry like William Morris, and I'm also not too sure I could sell that on Steam. So in order to modernize these philosophies, we need to strip these ideas down one step further if I'm to apply it to the things that I do, which is making games. To start to show you how I plan on doing that, let's take a look at a couple existing examples I have in mind. Hypnospace Outlaw is a 2019 puzzle game developed by J. Tolan, set in an alternate reality 1999 where people enter a fictional web browser in their sleep. The players enter as a moderator of the online community, fulfilling tasks by browsing user-made websites and flagging copyright violations, spam, and harassment. The game's interface is constructed to resemble Web 1.0, particularly the haphazard styles of GeoCities websites, in which a large portion of online traffic was directed to user-generated content online. The visual aesthetic was an essential component of the game, and a large part of the development process adhered to the same constraints of the time period. I'm talking limited screen pixel resolution and image compression forced onto users because of slow bandwidth. Tolan also discusses in an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun that the creation of the game's dozens of fictional users and interlinking web pages were built up over time organically, much like the genesis of neighborhoods in GeoCities. While this is getting closer to a practical use of the theories I'm covering here, I'd argue this is more closely an example of hauntology, which is described as the aesthetics of the past being brought into the present in the pursuit of a better future. The means of creating this aesthetic, however, is not necessary to the idea. So we're almost there. We're learning it's not just about reviving old aesthetics. We need to focus less on the inception of the idea or on the creative output, but set our sights in the middle zone here, because that's where the magic happens. And that, my friends, is what we in the biz like to call process ontology. This is the philosophical acknowledgement of the fundamental importance of process over things. My games, or the movies you love, the shape of our coastlines, nothing is static and everything exists as a series of interconnected relationships, ever changing and evolving. I didn't think I'd manage to squeeze in a Kamala Harris quote right now, but she really was right. You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. Anyways, I suppose now is as good a time as any to introduce you to my game, Cyberpedia.
Cyberpedia. Buckle up for a trip through time. Cyberpedia. Be careful not to blow your mind.
Cyberpedia is a fictional 90s era point-and-click edutainment game where players navigate a virtual museum to learn about historical art from around the world. The early internet was an exciting frontier for adults and children as it made large amounts of knowledge easily accessible. Cyberpedia was also designed to act as a port to the internet, which presented its information in a skeuomorphic format, as a bridge between traditional ways to engage with knowledge like museums and libraries, and this new frontier of online exploration through websites. As you boot up this old game, several decades have passed since Cyberpedia was last connected to the internet. This leads to several issues with the game, which its main character, Bookworth, experiences alongside the player. Sculptures and paintings have returned, altered, or broken, which the player must work to identify and correct alongside Bookworth. While not directly being inferred, the incorrect links present in Cyberpedia result from the introduction of artificial intelligence and generative art. With the rise in popularity of services like ChatGPT and Midjourney, content produced in part or wholly with AI contributes to a significant portion of the information uploaded online, calling into question the ethics of this technology and its effects on authenticity and the reliability of information. And in a creative sense too, in the same way William Morris's handmade textiles were threatened by automation, contemporary artists and writers are at risk of replacement by artificially generated images and text. In fact, while Morris was a part of the first industrial revolution, the rise in AI can be considered the fourth industrial revolution. So we find ourselves in a similar moment in history that asks artists to evaluate their art and sense of worth in the industry. So in this practice-based research, how did I set out to employ the theory of process in my work, and how was I going to use that to support themes I was exploring in my game? Well, to answer that question, I would like to introduce you to my friend. So here's my friend. This is my iMac G3. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself. Well, yes. Now, this line of computers were very popular in the early 2000s, which is around a time period that I find myself quite attached to, mostly because of nostalgia. I love making things that call back to this era of technology, in large part because the subject matter I talk about is so contemporary that it really highlights the contrast between the online landscape now versus kind of when the internet was first created. I thought to myself, if I'm going to make a game emulating a 90s point-and-click aesthetic, why not use the same tools someone back then would have? Cyberpedia was partly created through the 3D program Bryce. This modeling, rendering, and animation engine was first released in 1994 and continued receiving updates until Bryce 7 in about 2010. As Cyberpedia's visual aesthetics was built around the style of 90s computer graphics, as a fun exercise, I decided to generate the visuals for this game with similar resources as the generation it was based upon. This meant embracing the shortcomings of the program. Something that would take 2 steps in Blender would take like 5 in Bryce. But then I also got the satisfaction of learning something new. I got to try out these new tools, which I'm surprised don't come in every 3D program. I get to appreciate the UI design of legend Kai Kraus, whose graphical interfaces helped the transition between the physical and the digital. Process ontology became a crucial component in presenting a message that discussed the impact AI had on the online space. The game offers an argument against the use of AI, where design decisions were made that meant avoiding the use of any AI assistance was intentional. It would be no problem for models like ChatGPT or Midjourney to be prompted to generate landscapes in the style of 90s CGI. However, as I argue for the importance of the act of making as a part of creating, this result would have been unsatisfactory on this level. I've experienced this firsthand as well in having conversations with others about this game. It was great to see people's reactions when I explained my process. Conversations are more engaging, and I can hear about other people's experiences with this stuff as well. I imagine if someone asked me how I made everything and I just said AI, they'd be like, oh, cool. And that's about it. I guess it just feels like an unfinished thought. Everyone can still go ahead and enjoy AI generated stuff, of course, but what enthuses me is, with art and things like that, it's being able to see the work being put into it. It's being able to hear about the problem solving someone went through to reach their outcome. And by putting more effort into the technique, I think it makes for a much more enriching and rewarding experience. Cyberpedia has been a really fun and rewarding experience for me, getting to carve out my own niche by using retro software and operations to reproduce a visual aesthetic in line with the style of games I enjoy making. It seeks to answer the question, is there still a place for content online that resists the shift in the internet and its decentering of human-made work? And I think there is a lot of positive ways to answer that question, to find community and humanity in the digital age. And what I wanted to share with you today through my research and exploration was how embracing process was what did it for me. And I hope through this that you stop and remember to enjoy the ride as well.